Well, hello, and welcome to the AzureWell Podcast. I'm Susan Booth, and today we're going to be talking about mental health. And I think that probably involves all of us, not just people that seem to have a problem. I know that all of us need that help. So I'm joined today by Dr. Alphonzo Monzo. Dr. Monzo is a biblical naturopathic doctor, and he's done a great job of explaining a lot of these things that are really hard to understand. So he's going to be helping us understand mental health today. So welcome, Dr. Monzo.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to it. All
Yeah.
right.
So mental health,
Yeah.
achieve mental mastery. So where do we start?
Oh, that's a good question because I think this, does, like you said, this touches everybody. And this one's a little bit different than maybe some of the others. Of course, we haven't done that many yet. I think this is only number 3. But this is one of those topics where we don't really need to get into tons of anatomy because everyone kind of knows you have a brain.
Mm.
You have brain, you have nerves. People know that stuff. We don't need to get into long anatomy to explain this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But I think where we should start is maybe just some basic statistics
Okay.
about mental health and what we're talking about. Because when we're talking about mental health here, we're not just talking about how well is the brain and the nerves functioning, but how are you functioning uh, mentally and emotionally. And, almost 80% of all health problems, uh, according to studies, I think this was Harvard and stuff, they suggest that almost 80% of all doctor visits are related to mental emotional trauma, which really does lead to mental health because we're talking about how is your brain and the midbrain, the limbic system of the brain handling mental, emotional, physical stress. So here you can see some stats. 23.1% of US adults experience mental health condition in 2021.
That's a lot of people.
So that's a lot of people. And I think everyone can read some of these. I don't want to read all of them, but I'm just going to highlight a few here. What about the impact of depression and anxiety? You know, depression, anxiety. Okay, is that a mental issue stemming from something not working right in the brain, or is that emotional, or is it both? But it has a global um, economy of $1 trillion lost in productivity because people had so much depression and anxiety, they weren't able to focus on their job and their tasks. So we're talking about the economy lost $1 trillion and people not being productive.
Wow.
That's huge. And what about this other one here with the young adults from 18 to 25 have the highest rate of experiencing any mental health concerns, 33.7%, compared to adults that are 26 to 49. And the highest rate of serious mental illness at 11.4.
That
So
doesn't
we
seem
can see
normal. That's bad.
that's not normal, right?
Mhm.
You would think that as we get older and we have more stresses, because now you have kids and you have family and you have a job and you have demands, that's when you would be having and life crises. That's when you would be getting more of your stress and anxiety and depression. But that's not what this is showing. It's actually showing the age group that's, right out of high school, kind of basically college age, right? 18 to 25. So college students have the highest issue of mental health concerns.
Wow.
And I don't think it needs to be said that everyone's seeing a huge increase in mental illness across the board, especially as we get to younger kids. There's more autistic and neurodevelopmental issues today than there ever has been in our country. And then you have to just ask a simple question: why is this happening?
Mhm.
Like, if the medical field and medical science is so great, why do we have more of these problems these days? What's going on wrong? So hopefully we'll get into those. Let's go to the next slide here. You're going to see just a simple chart of mental health, and there you go. Percent experiencing mental health conditions by age. So there's that little chart again by age. And you can see the 18 through 25 is the highest there. And then 26 to 49 is second. So, and we don't know if this is going to change
And
as
people over
younger people get
50
older.
don't the people in the over 50 group are the least? To me, it feels like that chart is like it should be inverted. You'd think that the younger a person is, the less mental problems that they would have, and that as you get older, you would have more Alzheimer's and stuff like that that would kinda tip that, but this is showing the opposite. We've got young people that are having mental health issues. Wow.
Yeah, maybe this is we should call this the real pandemic,
Oh, there we go.
right? Because you're right. We have a lot of people who are older that have the dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Mhm,
But the scary thing to think of is we have a very young generation now that is having similar or worse neurological conditions now.
mm,
And that's a frightening concept. And I know there's some crazy numbers that have gone around about um, what they expect with autism. And I mean, I don't know if these stats are real, but I've heard stats like, in 10 years, it's going to be like 1 out of every 10 people are going to be autistic. And it's like, well, you can't even have a nation left
mhm,
if that was the case. Now, I don't know if those numbers are actually true, but what we do know is there's an incline. There's a direct
mm.
incline in these issues.
Sounds like something we need to try to fix, reverse that trend so that those things don't come true, you know?
Exactly. And we have some good suggestions here. So let's look at the top 10 factors that can contribute to mental health. So we're going to go to each one of these individually, but the 10 things are nutrition, and then you have homeocysteine and methylation, exercise, stress reduction and relaxation. So just think about that one there for a second. Pesticides and toxins, sleep, the microbiome, breathing, sunlight, EMFs, and grounding. Or really, if you look at the whole list, all 10 things, I think maybe you can see a pattern. And the pattern is these are all things that are now pretty much a problem in our society.
Mhm,
Like no one's really getting the 90 essential nutrients. The toxicity of the environment is really astronomical. There's no such thing as not being able to, or someone who doesn't really need to detox anymore. Almost everybody needs a detox now.
mhm,
And what about stress? Well, we have more stress these days than ever. I think cell phones have made things much worse, and um, social media, not just because you're getting exposed to so many more man-made EMFs, which is on the list,
mhm,
but we have this demand culture of you need to react in 2 seconds, and you have to be reacting and performing all day long. And then on top of that, most people aren't eating real food.
mhm,
So their gut and their microbiome's all messed up. They're probably not getting enough sleep. A lot of Americans definitely don't get enough exercise or movement. And how many of us are really spending time outside like we should be? So obviously, if we're not doing the right things, we should expect these things to be getting worse.
mhm.
So we're going to go through each one of these one by one
Okay,
and just cover them quickly. And then we're going to give you some suggestions and ideas that you can do about each one of these too.
okay.
So, nutrition. So, all areas of life and the body come back to proper nutrition, right? There's 90 essential nutrients that the body needs. And on top of that, there are some very specific things we need for the brain, like healthy fats.
Mhm,
And that's why when you look at things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, there's a direct relationship between the charts where you can watch the line go up on those type of diseases and the use of statin drugs.
mm,
Why? Because 80% of the brain is cholesterol and fat.
mm,
So cholesterol and fat is not the problem. The problem is why do you have an imbalance in cholesterol in the body? Because your body needs cholesterol, especially the brain. So we
So
need.
calling somebody a fathead should now be a compliment. You must be pretty smart if you're a fathead.
Yes, that's right. That's
Mm,
right. So we need our good, healthy omega-3 EPAs and DHAs. That's two out of the three essential fatty acids that the body needs.
Mhm.
And then you have copper. So the body needs copper. The brain and the nerves definitely need copper. And we have this interesting part of the brain called the locus ceruleus. And it's actually in the brainstem. And what it does is it feeds copper to the brain, mainly the midbrain where you have your limbic system. So the limbic system of the brain is what most people call the emotional brain. But it also has a lot to do with like your cravings and addictions, and it ties in a little bit to the opioids uh, pathways of the brain. So it has a lot to do with pain and relationships. So, and of course, the limbic system is the part of the brain that actually doesn't fully develop until most people say maybe in your mid 30s. So the younger you are, this part of the brain is still actually developing, and that's why they say we usually do dumb things when we're young because this part of the brain hasn't fully developed. But as you can imagine, you really need the copper to help that part of the brain develop. And
And
then
there
you
is
have
a
the
fine
methylated.
line. There
Oh, go
seems to
ahead.
be a fine line between your brain, your mind,
Hmm.
your emotions, and your mood. And all of those seem to intertwine. And from what you just described there, it sounds like there's a part of the brain that is working on all that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And some of this is really hard to talk about in a scientific perspective because a lot of this really gets into more spiritual concepts and what we believe as believers. The Bible talks a lot about the mind, and but the interesting thing about our minds and our thoughts and our feelings and emotions is the Bible often talks about the thoughts of the heart and things and phrases like that, and we think, oh, that's just being symbolic. But the more we study the Bible, the body, and the Bible, the more we keep finding out that these phrases are not so symbolic, that there is a direct correlation between how the heart is functioning and how the brain is functioning, how the gut is functioning and how the brain is functioning. So there really is a brain gut connection. So then you start wondering, is the Bible being symbolic or is the Bible really telling us the truth? And we just don't have the science or the understanding to really understand that. So, where does the seat of these things really come from? Is it something that's really a spiritual aspect of the body that's affecting the physical body, or is it the physical body affecting the spiritual, or is it both? We don't really know where to draw the line there, but we definitely know there's a huge connection.
Mhm. Yeah, and getting the physical body to be in the best health it can be, that is, a good first step for sure.
Hmm. And I think this is a good thing to talk about just for a second. Is there's a lot of imbalances in the faith, in the Christian world, and Hebrew Torah worlds and beliefs. And one of the biggest things I always see is these extremes. And there's a lot of extremes between materialism and then Gnosticism. And some people are really Gnostic, and they believe that the physical body doesn't matter, and the only thing that matters is spirit, and we should be walking in the spirit and neglecting the physical body because the physical body is the flesh, and it doesn't matter. But that's not really what the scripture says. And we're supposed to be balanced, and He gave us our bodies, and we're supposed to be reigning and ruling here on earth, even though we are spiritual beings and we have a spirit. We're supposed to be here, and we're supposed to have a physical flesh, and to deny the flesh really has a major impact on your spirit. And if you don't have good health, it's going to affect the spirit, and it's going to affect your mind, your will, your emotions. So it's going to affect the soul of the body. It's going to affect everything. So I don't think we can just compartmentalize these things and act like we're only going to live in one world or the other, when really it has to be integrated.
Mhm. Good point.
Yeah. So when we move on to other nutrients here, is the methylated B vitamins and then antioxidants like vitamin C and magnesium. Now, point two here, which goes along with methylated B vitamins, is homocysteine and methylation. Now, in the bottom corner there, you can see that's one of the charts I made up
Mhm.
of methylation. There's a bunch of these charts online. This is the one that I made. And you see the circle right in the middle. In methylation, there's 5 primary methylation pathways. or cycles. Some people use the word cycle, some people use the word pathway, and because they are cyclical, and that's recognized mainstream. I think there's 7 actually, and some of them I'm still working on. But that main one in the middle is your folate cycle, and that's the cycle that's responsible for taking certain B vitamins like B9 and B12 and turning them into a methylated form. And methyl groups in the body, excuse me, in the body you have these things called methyl groups, and it's just a group of so many hydrogen and oxygen that are combined, or hydrogen carbon combined, and they call it a methyl group. So most things in the body have to be methylated, and this is how it does it. So a fancy word for metabolizing. So these are metabolic processes that have to take place. And you can see all those little boxes there that are purple. Those are the methylation genes. So, and these genes are called what we would classify as epigenetic. That means they're not written in stone. They can be turned on and off. And most of these genes you want turned on. And when they're turned on, then they're able to make an enzyme that then is able to process something and metabolize something in the body. So the first process there in that first cycle is to make enzymes that can help metabolize and make your B9 and B12 into a methylated form. And then it passes it on both directions. So if you notice that middle circle, the arrows go both directions. So then when you come to the right of this chart, if you're looking at it on the right side, you get into what is called the methionine cycle. And the methionine cycle is what recycles homocysteine back into methionine. And so this is where you get the methylene or the methylation issues with homocysteine. Okay. And it says here, referring to homocysteine, is a biomarker of impaired cognitive abilities in children and in adults, is a risk marker for stroke and for dementia and for Alzheimer's, but also possibly for depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive disorder, Parkinson's, and multiple sclerosis. So most of these quotes you're going to see are going to be doctors of either PhDs or medical doctors somewhere. And this one is in pharmacology, the University of Oxford. So that's a pretty big statement. Now in methylation, there's another pathway that affects the brain. And that's the one you see to the left of the middle. And that's called the neurotransmitter pathway or cycle. And in this pathway, your body needs methylated B vitamins and then the genes to make the enzymes so your body can convert amino acids into neurotransmitters. So if you see those 2 arrows that are kind of coming down, it's taking your amino acids and turning them into serotonin, dopamine, glutamate, GABA. So what I have seen for years is a lot of people who have major depression and anxiety disorders where they're on pharmaceutical drugs almost always have a problem with their methylation genes here in this cycle. And that's the reason why they need serotonin reuptake inhibitors, because the genes are not on for your body to make serotonin or dopamine or GABA. And that affects a lot of mental emotional. Now, the good news is methylation is a relatively simple thing to work on if you know what you're doing.
Oh, good. I was
You can
going to
turn
say,
the
it
genes
sounds hard
back
to
on.
fix.
Yeah. So people don't have to be afraid that, oh, no, I have this gene mutation. Well, no, not really. These genes are epigenetic. That means above genetics. That means the genes can be turned on and off due to your environment and your exposure. So we get people good methylated B vitamins, which usually the non-synthetic vitamins are usually methylated. So that's one good sign to find out if you're not getting, because what B vitamins are on the top of the list of things to really watch out for synthetics. You know, you have your vitamin D, C, and B vitamins are usually at the top of the list for synthetic vitamins, and you don't want those. And if you can't methylate, if you have a problem with a methylation gene, then you definitely want methylated B vitamins so your body doesn't have to make that stuff. And by changing your lifestyle and getting the right bees in, eventually you can get these genes turned back on and upregulated so that they are functioning correctly. And then all of a sudden your body starts doing things that it's normally supposed to do.
Good. All right.
That one's a long topic. So now we're going to go into a little bit simpler one. Exercise. And this is one I don't have to say. Everybody knows that we're not getting enough exercise, and everyone, oh yeah, I need to get back out there. So exercise is the single best thing you can do for your brain in terms of mood, memory, and learning. Harvard Medical School. Look at that. And I think a lot of people realize this. When you're under a lot of daily stress, a lot of people just feel really great if they go out and exercise. Because when you're exercising, it helps release serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine, and all those things help lower your homocysteine again. Well, imagine that. And cortisol, which is being pumped from your adrenals normally. And guess what? That is also controlled by the center of the brain that we were talking about earlier, that limbic system, which needs copper. And copper is, again, related to fear. So when we have all this fear and stress and anxiety, then we're going to have an elevated level or cortisol being pumped from the adrenals. And good old exercise helps to reduce those things, as well as increasing the BDNF. So if no one's ever heard of that, that is brain-derived neurotropic factors. So these are factors that they have identified that really help promote cognitive function. So you'll see a lot of products on the market talking about using herbals or some type of glandular or something to help increase that. And we have products that help with that too. So, or at least Azure does. They're not really my products. So I'm just giving them advice on how to make some of these things. So
nice.
Well, I think that's all we have to say about stress, right? Or exercise, just other than get out there and do it.
I've heard that just walking, even if you don't do anything else but just walk, that has a positive effect on your mental abilities. Evidently, your your mind is still working to just balance, and it helps bring that stress down. So even if you don't go for intense exercise, just going for a walk helps fulfill this, puts a check by this box that this is what you can do for good health, mental health.
Absolutely. It doesn't have to be anything strenuous. Simple walks, even getting on a rebounder and getting your lymph flowing. Now, some people are more athletic, so maybe they want to do more and maybe they can handle doing more, but do it at your own pace. You don't want to overwork yourself. Yeah. The idea here is exercise, not working out. You don't want to work yourself out.
Yeah, because extreme exercise can be a stress on the body, which has its own detrimental effect. So,
yeah. And the thing to remember when you're exercising is you're going to sweat, which is great. Get some toxins and sweat out of the body, but you're also going to lose some of your electrolytes and key minerals. So don't forget to remineralize after you're sweating.
Right.
So I think number 4 is stress reduction and relaxation. So we still have the same little mental health guy down there, but now we're talking more about stress reduction and relaxation. Just trying to make it a priority to relax more. Maybe learn to breathe and relax. Find things that are relaxing to you, whether that's being out in nature or, some people that's sitting down and reading a book. Some people that's going to be stressful. So maybe they'd rather be outside in the mountains, or maybe someone would rather be out the beach, or maybe you'd like to be out with your family. Find ways that you can relax. And even if you're just taking, 5-10 minutes a day just to relax.
And I've noticed that with your breathing, there's that phrase, oh, don't hold your breath. Well, sometimes when you get in a stressful situation, you must be breathing to keep yourself alive. But then when you're done with it, you're like, and then you can breathe with your belly again, because, all that time you're like, and so you can, by breathing with your belly, and you're like, oh, this feels better. And so just putting yourself into that feeling of what you feel like when you are relaxed, even if you've been uptight, then you can move toward that feeling of being relaxed just by acting as if you're relaxed by breathing with your belly and just letting it go, kind of.
Yes. In fact, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about breathing here in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And, but, you know, most people realize when you are under stress, or let's say an event occurs, we have these stress responses of fight, flight, and freeze. And a lot of times we get stuck in those. And it's good to learn little simple methods that you can use, like focusing on your breath and other things, just to get out of that state so that your body can relax.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other things you can do with relaxation, like certain types of neurofeedback and things like that. There's one specifically, actually, I think on the next slide, if we go to the next slide here, it actually talks about, there it is, neurooptimal. So here are possible things that you can do. So suddenly a coworker says something to make you laugh, and your body may start to unclench and loosen up without you actively trying. That's an example of a simple way of even making a joke helps your body just to relax.
Mm-hmm.
So here are other ways: laying down for 30 minutes, sitting down and doing nothing, unwinding with friends, listening to music. There are certain types of music that really help relax, and engaging in activities you find relaxing, and of course, brain training. Now, my favorite is neurooptimal because that is a non-forced style of brain training and neurofeedback. Some forms of neurofeedback are a little bit more like doing a brain scan and finding where the brain is too high and too low, and then trying to push and pull in the opposite direction. I don't typically like forcing the body to do things like that. So neurooptimal makes a very interesting system that's really a neurofeedback device, and that it's reading your brain and giving the feedback to your body, and then it allows your brain to make its own choices to make new pathways in the body. And so it's kind of like going to the gym for your brain, and it's not a forced stimulation. So that is you can find usually you can find neuro optimal practitioners in your state, and sometimes you can even rent a device. And it's really phenomenal for people who have battling any type of addiction or major neurological issue where you need to break that pattern and make new pathways in the brain. So that's that. Now we're on number 5. Toxins, pesticides. Well, they're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, chemical toxins can deplete your essential nutrients, and they can cause inflammation in the brain. So that's not what we want. And of course, it's in our foods. So we know about MSGs, we know, now we have GMOs, we have all the food colorings and all the artificial flavorings and all the stuff that we try to keep out of our diet. And we definitely don't want them in our supplements. But all these things cause inflammation in the brain. And of course, we don't want to forget about the big bad guy that we talked about when we did the week on ceruloplasmin, which is unbound iron. And I kind of attached the abstract here. It's kind of hard to see, but if someone pauses the screen and kind of zooms in there, you can see that. If you want to go and try to read that, this was a research on iron in the brain, and it's really interesting. There, it says that it is well known that that iron accumulation in the brain for people with, what does that say? Huntington's disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis. I mean, it just keeps listing all of them. And it's interesting. It says we have known for a decade that when iron accumulates in the brain, it causes all these neurological conditions, which is fascinating to me because it's like we've known for a decade. I've never heard anyone talk about this really. They're definitely not teaching this in medical school. So this is the problem. You have independent research that's done. And the only way the medical doctors or even holistic health practitioners are going to know about this is if you find this article and you read it and you go, whoa, what's going on here with unbound iron? And not to single that one out because there's a lot of other heavy metal toxins that can affect the brain. But I think this is the most unnamed heavy metal toxin that can affect the brain, and it's not supposed to be there, right?
Mm.
You want your iron that is bound to minerals, and you want that in your blood getting into the hemoglobin and the mitochondria that make energy. You don't want it accumulating in the brain.
Mhm.
So another reason why um, we need products to help get this stuff out of the body.
Mhm.
So I think the next one here, number 6, is sleep. Another one we don't probably have to talk about. This is another topic that everybody knows you need sleep, and probably you're not getting enough.
Mhm.
But it's nice to get at least 8 hours a night. Now, sometimes some people are a little bit different. Some people can run on very little sleep. Although the more they study, the more they find out that you're kind of cutting things short for yourself if you're the type of person who's always going, going, going and not getting enough sleep. Uh,
Mhm.
Eventually, you have to kind of pay the piper for that. And so, usually later in life is when you're gonna run out of gas.
Mhm.
So, deep sleep helps with anxiety. And what do you need for sleep? Well, you need a lot of those good neurotransmitters like serotonin, and even melatonin is the one for sleep. Serotonin you also need, but that's your daytime, and melatonin is your nighttime, but they work on a cycle. So,
Mhm.
so you need
What
at least an average of 8 hours a night to get your body recovering, and your brain has to recover, but your immune system has to recover. Your body has to do all of its catch up during your sleep.
Mhm. Well, this feels like a chicken or the egg thing because, okay, if without sleep, you get all stressed and can't handle anything. And when you're all stressed and can't handle anything, you can't sleep. And
Mhm.
a lot of people that, you have a stress event and you can't sleep that night. You're like, your mind is too busy. And so you miss a lot of sleep. Maybe you finally fall asleep after a while, but then, it's hard to fall asleep. Other people will have no problem falling asleep. Yep, I can go to sleep easily. But then they'll wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning. Can't go back to sleep, can't go back to sleep. And both of them turn out to be a situation where the next day, "Oh, I can't think and I'm grouchy and, I feel bad and, you know, things tick me off easy," or whatever. And so then, of course, that makes you have more stress and you cause more stress for yourself and others. And then you go to bed that night. Oh, that was terrible. And you can't sleep that night. And it just starts this cycle. And it's hard to get out of. It's not like, oh, I'm stressed. I think I'll just go sleep it off. Sometimes that's hard to do.
Yeah, and you get stuck in this fight or flight response,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And so during that time, you have a lot of adrenaline and cortisol. So you just kind of power through things. But
Right.
usually, once things calm down, you'll notice a lot of people crash
Mm.
after those intense periods of time. And this is why, because you're not getting enough sleep. And then that has a further effect on mental emotional stress and, of course, on your body's immunity and everything else. So eventually, your body just kind of crashes and says, nope, I'm going to make you rest now because
Mhm.
we need to catch up.
What would you say is wrong with just, taking, some sleeping pill? I'm not sure what the brand names are, but, the ones that help you sleep. What would you say? How does that affect how the brain works when you're trying to
Mhm.
get well from something like that, and yet you take something to force yourself to sleep?
Yeah, that's not a good thing. You never want to force your body into a specific direction. And that is the problem with almost all pharmaceuticals is they're very big on pushing the body in a certain direction, symptom maintenance, which just make you get some sleep. But the problem is there's an integral balance in the body with these cycles and how your body's making your hormones and your neurotransmitters like the serotonin and melatonin. And um, when you start taking drugs for too long, it gets the body off of balance and off of making these things naturally, which then means you're going to become dependent on it. And that's not what you want.
Mm.
So, and usually the only reason people take these things is because they are not aware of natural remedies or natural herbals or supplements that you can take to really try to achieve the same thing without forcing the body.
Mhm.
Because most of the natural remedies are going to do something to basically help support the body in a certain direction, not force it.
Right.
Yep. So that's number 6. Number 7 is the microbiome. So here we go. The gut or gut brain connection So right here, where does it say the father of neurogastroenterology believes that we have a second brain in our gut? Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
And like I was saying, this is another thing that's alluded to, I think, even in scripture, is the idea that even our digestive tract has the ability to have thoughts. Well, now they're finding that's true, that um, 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in these cells that are lined the gut tract, right? So now they're finding that a lot of the things that we contribute to our thoughts are also found in the lining of the gut. And so there's a direct correlation. And then we can also know that if you have something more like what we would call almost like leaky gut, where things are getting through the gut lining that aren't supposed to, like toxins, well, now they're going to get back into the blood and back into circulation and maybe end up in the brain. So there's a direct correlation between gut and brain, which is why it's important to keep the microbiome healthy and your gut lining healthy so that your body is making a lot of these neurotransmitters and things correctly. Because obviously, if your body's not making serotonin correctly, you're going to have a major problem. And what we see with a lot of people who are these uh, circadian rhythms are off is they're producing way too much serotonin late at night. Serotonin is supposed to be stimulated by the light of the morning, and it's supposed to be produced during the day to give you more of your daytime energy. And then when the lights go out at nighttime is when your body's supposed to shift over to melatonin. And a lot of times this is backwards, where people are producing serotonin and melatonin at the wrong time or not producing it because their gut's messed up. And so we need to do things to get the gut back in line.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that one. Number 7. Number 8 now is going to be breathing.
Mm-hmm.
As we were talking earlier, another way to relax. A study has found evidence to show that there is actually a direct link between nasal breathing and our cognitive functions. So what do you see here in the diagram? The diagram shows we're breathing deeply into the nose and then breathing out in the mouth. And you're wanting to fill up that whole cavity. And we don't want to just fill up the chest, but your tummy comes out and your chest fills up, and then letting it all out and breathing nice and slow. So, take so many breaths in and then so many breaths out. Well, it's not really breaths, but you know what I mean. So many seconds in and out. And
Yeah.
of course, this is going to reduce your fight or flight response.
Nice.
And it's also going to improve your oxygenation. So we need oxygen for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So this has twofold benefit there.
Nice.
So number 9, sunlight. Oh, how important is this? We have too much blue light. So sun exposure helps to increase levels of serotonin, a neurotransmitter that plays a key role in mood regulation, as I was just kind of talking about daytime energy. Well, sunlight, they also have found, helps the body, especially in the eyes, make melatonin. So it's very interesting that during the day, when I think it's the early morning sunlight actually helps your body make the melatonin, but when it gets dark, the body releases it.
Oh.
So now we know that sunlight is directly responsible for helping you make serotonin and your melatonin, and of course you need it to activate your active D, and you need it to make your active D. Your body gets inactive D from the sunlight, and then your body turns that into the active form of D. But your body also uses sunlight to activate your retinol, your vitamin A.
Mm-hmm.
So sunlight, very important. And vitamin A, which is a fat soluble vitamin, is used very heavily with your eyes and the brain. And so is melatonin, serotonin, all these things directly related to the brain. So more energy, improved mood, better sleep.
So I can imagine that this is your body has a more difficult time when you're wearing sunglasses. So if the morning sunshine is supposed to be producing this, and then you put on your sunglasses, but how does that work with like light coming through glass? So for example, I have glasses, they're not tinted, but you're on your morning commute to work and the sun's in your eyes. That probably doesn't count because it's coming through the windshield. Does this have to be like outdoor sunshine getting right on your eyes?
Yeah, it should, because a lot of glass filters out the full spectrum, some of the UV. And that's because originally people thought UV light was bad for you. Well, now we find out that no, you do need uh, the full spectrum light from the sun, including UV. And of course, when you're in front of computers all the time, you're getting all this blue light. So one of the things you can do is get your blue light blocker glasses, something that has an orange or yellow tint. I like these ones. I think these are Hedron blue blockers, but there's a bunch of different companies out there. There's the big biohacker guy. I can't think of his name right now. I think they're called True Dark, but there's a number of different companies out there where you can get glasses like this. So if you're sitting in front of a screen for too long, the blue light is better a little bit in just daytime, but especially in the evening when you're getting closer to, past noon, you definitely want to start getting your glasses on to help your body start winding down and try to get rid of all that blue light. So that's something simple you can do. But yeah, you want to try to get outside and just kind of like glaze into the sky and just, you don't have to look directly at the sun. There are some people that claim you can do that, but I'm not suggesting you need to look directly at the sun. You just need to be outside and get some sun on your skin. Maybe take your glasses off for a couple minutes. And it doesn't have to be that long. Just 5 to 15 minutes out in the sun a day is huge.
Nice.
So the next one is number 10. One of my favorite, just because of my background, EMFs and grounding. And I have been talking about man-made EMFs and how bad they are for you since actually the 1990s, probably the late 1990s, because that's when I was in electrical engineering and I studied a lot of Tesla's work, even though technically in electrical engineering, they don't even teach his stuff. They just teach you, he made AC current and that's it. And I was like, what? Aren't we going to study all his stuff? They were like, no, you don't need to know that. Oh. That doesn't sound right. Now I know why, because Tesla was working on things that they would rather you not talk about today, like free energy and plasma energy and all this kind of stuff that they don't want you to know about. But it's very interesting that Tesla was the first person in that's recorded history to have what we would call electromagnetic hypersensitivities. With all of his experiments, he kind of drove himself crazy, and he was so sensitive that the vibrations of a car driving down the street drove him crazy. And the ticking of a clock, even if it was a couple rooms away, he said it felt like someone hitting his head with a hammer. So he became really electromagnetic sensitive. A lot of people don't even realize this, but it's in the records. And then there's a lot of people who have done major research on this. The first big one was the fish pond experiment, which was in Europe, and that's where they put in a neighborhood with power lines, and they numbered all the houses, and some houses were closer to the power lines and some were further away, and then they documented what happened to all the people living in these houses, even when people moved out of the house and someone new moved in. Very interesting. And a lot of times, certain houses that were really close, even when multiple families lived in the house, everyone kept getting the same diseases.
Oh my.
Most of this was all swept under the rug because this was the first test on a power grid to see what electrical lines would do to you. And what they told us is, don't worry about it. It's safe. And now we know that no, man-made electrical EMFs are not good because they interfere with the body's electrical systems of the body. That's how they really work. So microwave frequency or electromagnetic frequency. So technically, EMFs would be electromagnetic fields. And they've found all these different neurological problems, including depression. The best group out there is the Bioinitiative Report. And I think their last updated one is the Bioinitiative 2012. You can go there, and I forget how many scientists they have. They have like 90 some scientists, which are made up of medical doctors, engineers, scientists who are studying the effects of EMFs and RF on the body. Now, RF is radio frequency. That's what we would call your phone and Wi-Fi and routers, which really is a form of radio and microwave combined. So when you're getting radiation from cell phones and from wireless technology, you're actually getting a form of microwave radiation, because that's the only way they can broadcast the information across the world, because radio waves and microwaves are different lengths, and the different lengths mean two things: how much information it can carry and how far it can go. So radio waves are very long, but they can't carry much information. Microwaves are very short, but high power, so they can carry a lot of information, but not very far. So what happens is they superimpose the two on top of each other, and now you have a way of carrying a lot of information really far. And so a lot of people don't realize this when they're using a cell phone every day to your head. It's basically almost like holding a microwave up to your head. And that's really true for all the wireless technology. And so we have known this stuff for some time. It's just people really don't talk about it. So it's really good to learn this stuff. And the best method for this is learn how to get distance between you and your device. If you have a cell phone, don't carry it around you all the time. Put it in your bag, put it in your purse, put it in your pocket. And when you get somewhere, put it on the table away from you. If you're going to talk on your phone, put it away from you, put it on speakerphone if you can. Or if you have to, there's special headsets you can get. Obviously, a wired headset is way better than Bluetooth or wireless. And the next step up is they have something called air tube headsets. And this is where the electrical part only goes so far on the wire. And then it usually goes to this little box. And then from that little box are these little hollow tubes that come up to your ears. So the only thing that's traveling in the hollow tube is the sound wave, nothing electrical. So now you have further distance from your phone. And then, the mic is usually on that little box. So now you can find creative ways to get separation or distance from you. And then, of course, there are some companies out there that make products, and we don't want to get into that because there's a million products, and then a lot of them are really not that good. But there's a few products out there that are pretty good, that if people were interested in that information, we could probably get that information to you. But you want to look for good companies that have been triple party tested, that actually do something for EMFs. So that's why. And now the other thing you can do about EMFs, of course, is grounding. Right? So a lot of times we're building up almost like a static charge, and our body just needs to ground. And you think the older lifestyles, we used to probably do a lot more walking, and we didn't have shoes like we have today, maybe leather insoles or just leather sole on the bottom of the foot. And that's about it. So we were still making a lot of contact with the earth. So just grounding for a couple minutes every day is a great way to neutralize all the static electricity, and it helps balance hormones and helps sleep and helps promote relaxation. And then some people get into the grounding sheets and grounding pads. I have no problem with that. Just the only warning with those things is really two things. One, you really want to make sure the company sends you a meter, or you buy one at Homes or Home Depot or Lowe's that is a grounding meter. It's a very simple thing. It usually has 3 lights on it. You just plug it into your outlet, and it tells you whether or not the ground on your outlet is actually grounded. Because believe it or not, the quality of workmanship these days is that bad that it could be possible that your house is not grounded like you think. And if you're plugging something into that wall, you don't want to be plugging it in regular electricity if it's not grounded right. So make sure your house is grounded. And the other thing is, a lot of grounding pads or sheets have to use some type of metallic fibers, which are not the best thing to come into direct contact with. So if you're going to use one of those, it's better to put it on your bed or wherever it is, and then put a 100% cotton or linen sheet over top of it, so you're not coming in contact with the metal particles.
Yeah, and I think about people that just none of us, when you start thinking about what you do in a day, you put on shoes that have soles on them that don't connect you to the earth. And there's very little opportunity throughout your day to actually, do something that grounds you. I mean, maybe petting your cat, if your cat's on the ground, that might ground you. I don't know. But it's one of those things where I think about some of the sickest people, the people that are the most ill, and they're, up so many floors in a hospital. They are, in a nursing home where they don't get out. It feels like the healthiest people are the ones that are able to reach the ground, touch it, walk on it. And the people that need it the most are the ones that have the least access to be able to just get out and put their feet on the ground barefoot, not just walking, but with their shoes, but something to actually connect them to the ground. And it's difficult because the people that need it the most have the hardest time getting out there.
Yeah. And just overall, looking at all these, is you can see a direct correlation to our disconnect from the earth.
Mhm.
Right.
Literally.
Literally, yeah. So what can we do about this with supplements? Okay, so I think we're here is the slide for the first the core products from Azure. So you can see at the top left, basic nutrition for the brain, core copper, and your cod liver oil. So you're going to get your healthy fats and your copper. But how about other core products? Well, we have racing mind relief with magnesium G. That is a really cool product from AzureWell because it helps promote calmness, mental tranquility, relaxation. It helps with falling asleep and emotional balance. So this is a great one. If you're not able to quite fall asleep, this is a good one. It's not directly designed for sleep. It's really directly designed for calmness and relaxation. And then it has some magnesium malate in there too, because magnesium helps with relaxing the body. Now, another one here is called brain support. Now, this one's more for actually supporting the brain itself with proper lipid membrane support. So your healthy fats, again, so these are different herbal formula to help with the lipids of the brain and help with brain structure, brain function, and including the alpha GPC, which helps memory and learning and cognitive. So there's one really specific core product for brain support. It's going to help your nerves and things like that too. And then you have the quick and bright thinker support. Now this one is more focused for memory, cognitive functioning, so learning, attention. And of course, we mentioned this earlier, but this is one of those products because of the specific herbal formula in here. It helps those brain-derived neurotrophic factors.
Mhm.
Now, one more we can throw in here is the activated B complex because it has your methylated B vitamins in there. And so that's going to help the brain and nerve support. It's going to help the methylation. It's going to help your eyes. So those would be our core products
Well,
for mental health.
going back to the quick and bright thinkers support, we actually had fun naming that product because we wanted to make sure that everyone from students to older people all felt comfortable buying and using that one because it is good for, hey, if you've got that final exam and you know you need to be sharp for it and you want that mental acuity for your education, yes, that's for you. But it's also really good for someone who's older that is having those problems that older people have. So we named it such that both people would recognize that it's for them because this is, quick and bright thinkers support. And I think that's something all of us try to do is think.
Now, do you want to share? I know you guys mentioned you've had a number of testimonies from people using some of these products now for mental emotion or just mental functioning.
Mhm. Yeah, the combination of the brain support and the quick and bright thinker support, we've had quite a few testimonials coming in that has really dramatically helped people that seemed to be in a decline, and they normalized their mental function, and that's really what supplements are intended to do, is help people be normal, So, yeah, we've got
That's
some
right.
good testimonials on that.
So now we have to activate and strengthen the mental health with really specific formulas here. So for stress reduction, burnout, adaptogen vitality, so your body's ability to adapt, there's really two formulas here. The main one for adapting is really adreno new adaptogen. That one really has the adaptogen support in it, and it also helps with the stress and the burnout. The adrenal food doesn't really have adaptogens in it, but it's designed to help the adrenals function with giving nutrition for the adrenals. So it's going to help more with the stress and the burnout. Now, for good sleep, there's melatonin liquid. So here is a plant-based version of melatonin that's going to help the body with sleep without having to worry about taking um, a more forced approach with like a pharmaceutical drug, or even this isn't even a animal-based melatonin. This is actually a plant-based melatonin, which a lot of people don't realize. So this one really helps with the melatonin in the sleep. Now, if you combine that one with um, uh, the restful mind, then it could help even more. Now, this one is just directly melatonin. And then for neurological support, when you need a little bit extra support with like things like GABA and other neurological functions of the brain, we have taurine plus. So taurine is really good for the brain. It's really good for the liver, but it has certain functions in this herbal formula that's very similar to the functions of GABA, which really is a calming neurotransmitter. And then the other two is MAG-G, which is just for calming the body and supports many, many brain functions. There's a great book out there called The Magnesium Miracle. And if you really want to know about all the functions that magnesium plays in the body, that's a great book. So magnesium, really important for everything in the body, but especially for calming the body, relaxing the body, and brain function. And again, of course, IP6 to get that iron out of the body. So if you know you have an accumulation of iron and you need to get it out, there you go. There's a specific product that you can use to help get that iron out. And those are the products that Azure has to help you with your mental health support.
That's good. Yeah. Dr. Monzo, that was very helpful, because I think you brought out some things that aren't normally brought out when people talk about mental health. And so much of what's considered normal treatment for mental health nowadays is just drugs. And you've got some really good suggestions there. So thank you. If you'd like to know more about Dr. Monzo, he's at drmonzo.com, drmonzo.com. And we'll look forward to having you on again for another subject, because this is really helpful. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Monzo.
Thank you.